or maybe you're looking into learning how to connect more within your body, within yourself, so that you could feel safer, or maybe that's a newer concept. Well, today we're going to be talking about that with our guest, and I'm going to go ahead and share her bio. Jessenia Ramirez is a New York Latina therapist, a supervisor, consultant, speaker, and the founder of Capaz Counseling. She specializes in attachment and trauma therapy and creates communities for fellow BIPOC therapists in New York, all with the intention to help folks deepen their relationship that they hold within themselves and others. So, this is going to be a beautiful conversation integrating her specialties. And this conversation will be about 15 minutes. So, whether you're navigating stress, burnout, or past pain, this episode is an invitation to come home to yourself. And we're just gonna go ahead and bring in Jasenia. So Jasenia, welcome, welcome. Hola, hola.
Hola, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's been a long time coming, and let's go ahead and dive into these questions that are, I think, very. I do think when it comes to mental health that they are very grounding in themselves. So
Mm.
the first one that I have for you is, what are some ways to create a sense of safety within yourself when the outside world feels so unsafe?
Okay. Well, I would begin by saying that we know that safety, by definition, is about protection over danger, pain, etc. So I would say first, begin by playing with expanding that definition, more so into determining what would help you feel soothed with intentionality. um, Creating safety within yourself when the outside world feels unsafe for our communities looks like exploring that balance with how you connect with yourself as an individual intrapersonally and how you connect with others in a community interpersonally, all while being intentional about it.
Mhm.
um, I would say individually, so intrapersonally, be curious about how you connect with yourself in recurring environments like your workspace, your classroom, your living room. Be curious about how you connect with these environments in a way that cultivates safety individually. Does it look like developing wellness routines like regulating your breath, having music only hour? Or does it look like connecting with like a specific mindset, like writing intentions and mantras for the next day in these spaces? And then I would say in community, interpersonally, be curious about how you connect with your recurring social environments. Does it look like inviting colleagues out after work, engaging in civic action, inviting your crew over for game night? I think ultimately creating safety comes down to how you identify what suits you and how you connect intrapersonally and interpersonally intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much within within everything that you said, and I really want to point out to folks that Jasenia is mentioning a duality here. This duality has to exist of individual, awareness, and then also collective awareness and support that is required. And all of these, from what I'm also hearing, there's a foundation of boundaries that are necessary to create and to find
Mm.
these spaces that help you feel like your identity belongs, and most importantly that your emotions are welcomed and safe there as well, because we can't separate our emotions from our somatics, our body sensations.
Mm.
Your body sensations are what helps lead you, guide you. But when we experience hardships and chronic, I'm just going to say chronic traumas, generational traumas, we tend to lose that connection within our bodies. And some of
Mm.
us may end up maybe lacking or not knowing how to make decisions for ourselves. And
Mhm.
so it can get everything that Jasenia is mentioning is important, and it can be a journey to get there as well. And we all have our own separate timelines as to how to identify and get to these spaces, but they are really important for us to engage into, um, including the activism part. I love that you also mentioned that, because I think we do tend to forget about that when it comes to safety. I think academically and like socially and media wise, we're taught that activism, it creates trauma. Activism is, we need to kind of stay away from it, or it's for rebels, but no, it's actually something that can help ground us as well in, being part of a revolution and feeling safe. So we can probably go on and on in regards to that topic. Now, for, let's say, the eldest siblings, or for people that may have a hard time prioritizing their own needs, because maybe in some direct or indirect way they were taught to prioritize the needs of other people, whether that's through emotions or physical, acts of service. What do you recommend? What are some gentle ways that people can start prioritizing their own needs and self-care there?
Mhm. I mean, our communities have persevered because of the power that we've derived from being community centric. So, like, understandably, for some people, it could be extra difficult to prioritize things like self care because it could seem like it goes against our values, against our wiring, like it focuses on individualism and may like even be selfish, which is something that I often hear clients sharing in session. But I don't know. I don't know that it's fully fair to view self care as simply like an individualistic act. Um, in fact, when you look at lists online about self care, uh, I often notice something in common that will just pop up in repetition and different variations. And that is always like in the list, connect with a loved one. Text a friend, call your family, go out with your people. It's always coming back to connect with the loved one. So I would say self care inherently leaves the option to go beyond just you. And I always find comfort in like a very famous quote by Audre Lorde that is caring for myself is not self indulgence, it's self perseverance. And that is an act of political warfare. So, coming back to that earlier point about civic engagement, I love that quote. I think it speaks to how self care is an investment into you, but it's also an investment into our communities, which is leaning into what we find ourselves sometimes stuck in a cycle of caring for others. But self care is an investment in a multitude of ways. And I think that's powerful.
Absolutely. And I think I'm going to take it to some examples that I hear in the therapy space as a therapist. In previous years, some of my clients have expressed that they have had to learn how to say no, as like just a sentence in itself, or just how to, even if it's not no, because no can be very intimidating for the body in itself too, but just how to find ways to reject and, just advocate for themselves so that they're able to create that self-care. And this can be towards a boss as well. Like if you have too many projects going on, and then you keep getting stacked on more tasks, you have to learn, especially for those that are passive or passive aggressive communicators, how to vocalize your needs, because otherwise no one's going to see them and no one's going to help you prioritize and get you where you need to be rest wise. And culturally, speaking of rest, we're taught that, como se ha dicho, que we're taught that rest is something that we need to earn. And we as a community collective, we need to completely reject that notion, because it's something that we deserve. It's not something we need to work hard for and then do. It's something that we need to balance, integrate into our lifestyle so that we can just be able to experience joy. Because if we're not rested, we're just fatigued, we're gonna burn out, we're not gonna be happy, we're gonna experience compassion fatigue overall. So there's consequences to not prioritizing ourselves. And so I'm glad,
Mhm.
Jessenia, that we're talking about this. And for folks to know, this was
Yeah.
Jessenia's topic of choice. So I think this is a great
Mhm.
one that, again, a great reminder for comunidad. All right.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, for folks that feel like therapy is overwhelming or maybe intimidating, what's something that you would suggest for people to ease into therapy or the idea of therapy?
Ah, yeah. Well, first, I love reminding folks that therapy is not like an immovable commitment. You can absolutely begin and then pause and like pick it up when it feels easier to access. And I mean, us therapists, we get it. Half the time we expect it. So I guess just kind of setting that as like the groundwork to work with. Um, but I would say another thing to help ease into it is to play with the idea of not doing anything overwhelming or intimidating, um, to not do it without keeping your mind and body into consideration. Um, in fact, something that is quite helpful is if you're going to do anything overwhelming or intimidating, to do it incrementally. Your body's resistance, your mind and body's resistance deserves to be respected, right? And so, to kind of meet yourself where you're at, try and do things gently and in steps instead of jumping in and completely disregarding that resistance. So, what can that look like? That can look like, for easing into therapy incrementally, begin first by like searching online for therapists and compiling a list. Then it would look like, second, looking at the therapist profiles. Third, sharing the idea with someone that you trust. Fourth, scheduling a consultation, which is usually like a 15-minute phone call, um, or consultations. Fifth, consider writing up some main points that you want to target ahead of the consultation call. Mm, Six would be to, in having the consultation, um, make sure that when you have it, you end with letting sure that the therapist knows that you're not looking to make an immediate decision, right? We have mind and body in mind always. Seventh, giving yourself the time to select the therapist that worked for you. Eighth would be actually scheduling that first appointment with the therapist. Ninth would be writing up some points that you want to make sure to target in that first appointment. And then 10th would be to actually have that appointment and attend it. So that's 10 whole steps, all of which would also benefit from like having self-care, self-regulation, strategies like sprinkled throughout these steps, right? Again, mind and body, always in consideration. You want to honor your initial reaction, but there's 10 whole steps. And I think doing things in increments is always like a nice point to turn to with these kinds of moves.
As someone with ADHD, I definitely am very grateful for like steps, procedures, and just breakdowns
Mhm.
because overall the entire process can get very overwhelming, especially for individuals that aren't familiar with the process. And so, if you don't know Latinx therapy, here we have a directory, and it is a national directory. We are missing some therapists in a few states, but for example, you can find Jessenia. She is part of the directory and she is in New York practicing there. And so, I would recommend start there. You can search by insurance. Everybody on the directory accepts private pay. So if you're paying out of pocket, that's a go-to place. And there's different filters as well. If you're looking for an LGBTQIA therapist or a therapist that is a child of immigrants or DACA, formerly undocumented. There's all sorts of filters that really can help you to feel more connected to your provider. And then
Mhm.
if maybe don't find anyone on there and you're searching for insurance, I'll just give some logistical guidance on that. You would need to call the number on the back of your card and ask them for mental health individual therapists. They might ask, like, do you need a psychiatrist, or is this for rehab or something like that, like inpatient? You're just looking for individual mental health therapy. Some insurances may call it behavioral health. Um, And so ask them if they have Latino identifying therapists. They might have it as like Hispanic therapists, and ask what other filters they may have. But I think that reflection work of what do I want to go to therapy for is important, so that you know what the
Mhm.
therapist should specialize in, because we don't all specialize in the same things. And that's really important when you're doing your
Mhm.
search. You want them to specialize with what you need, your lived experiences, so they could be able to help you best.
Mhm.
So, with that, I also want to give a resource in regards to this topic, because I know that when it comes to prioritizing your needs, and also just helping you to create a sense of self safety through boundaries, you might experience some estrangement, maybe not completely from your family, but there could be some distancing or from your loved ones. And so I really recommend following our colleague, Violeta Fernandez. She's in Texas, and she's created Latinx Estrangement. And she has some groups from time to time for people that are experiencing estrangement and need a community, need a space to talk about their experiences. So check out that work. And Jessenia, if you could tell us a bit more about where you're located, other specialties, and yeah, anything else to conclude.
Yeah, sure thing. So in overseeing my practice, Capaz Counseling, it is intentionally virtual. The idea is to try to access as many New Yorkers as possible, and so that is the groundwork that we try to operate from. And we love working with folks from all walks of life. We do have our specializations, and that is identity, relationships, trauma. Oof, it's always when you're live that you blank, huh? Identity, relationships, and trauma and parenting. There you go. And we just often always have folks coming our way in particular for that. But again, we love working with anyone that is interested in beginning this journey. We take it step by step. And I say we because while I'm the founder, I often have a team that offers affordable care at $25 a session. So, it's a team effort.
Oh, that's incredible. I didn't know that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. Well, this concludes today's episode, and I'm here trying to, like always, play DJ in the back. So, Jasenia, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, please be sure to follow Jasenia. I will have her information in the show notes. You can find her on Instagram at Capaz Counseling. And if you're looking for a therapist, again, it's latinxtherapy.com. For folks that speak Spanish, terapiaparalatinos.com. Thank you so much, Jasenia, for your time.
Thank you. Gracias. Ciao.
Everyone. I'll try to figure out how to end. Okay.
Okay. Do I jump off or how does this?